Hey everybody, welcome to another episode, the 13th episode of Before the Bald Man Speaks. I'm your host as always, Andrew the Clown Kid Lawrence. You can always get at me on Twitter at the Clown Kid. Coming to you live directly after UFC 191 in the main event between Demetrious Johnson and John Dodson. A dominant performance by the only flyweight champ in UFC history. We had kind of a tale of two cards this time around. We had a really exciting preliminary bunch of battles and a lot of interesting finishes in the Fox Sports 1 section of the fight. And then we kind of had the pay-per-view portion, which was really lackluster at points, with a few highlights in the main event and in the Anthony Rumble Johnson fight. But here live with me to help me break down every fight and to talk a little bit about and digest what we just saw. I got Nick Baldwin from MMA Junior. How you doing, Nick?
Not too bad. Thanks for having me back on the show, Andrew. Really appreciate it.
No, man, we love having you on the show. Glad we could schedule you in and have you back. So let's talk about the main event. In my mind, a pretty easy score to fight, or a pretty easy fight to score. How did you score the main event?
I actually gave all 5 rounds to Demetrious Johnson. I believe one judge saw it how I saw it. 2 saw it 4-1. Of course, some people on Twitter were saying Dodson won 1 round. I believe like the first or the second. But really, I saw it definitely 50-45 for Demetrious Johnson. And at the worst, 49-46.
Yeah, I was in the 49-46 camp with giving the second round to Dodson. I think most people who had that 49 score gave the second to Dodson. Yep. It seemed like it was around for a bit there, that it looked like you could turn the tide of the fight. Clearly, Demetrious made those great in between round adjustments and really gave a bunch of different looks. What I think really separates Mighty Mouse Johnson from from the rest of the 125-pound division is his ability to make these adjustments mid-rounds and his ability to take instruction from his corner, and just the diversity of offense that he has a lot of different things to go to. So when plan A, B, and C don't work, he moves on to, D, E, and F when, most fighters struggle to have a plan B.
Yeah, I completely agree. Demetrious Johnson he showed once again he's just on a different level than John Dodson, and he's a guy that can adjust, like you mentioned, so easily. John Dodson, he is arguably the second best flyweight, and he went out there and really got destroyed. The first couple rounds were competitive, but I was tweeting throughout the fight, and I was basically saying third round kind of was showing Johnson pulling away. Fourth and fifth were very dominant for Demetrious Johnson. Johnson proved once again he's on another level than everybody in the 125-pound division. And yeah, he does have plan B, plan C, and so on. He doesn't just have plan A, and if that doesn't work, he's screwed.
I think another good point to be made during this fight was that the John Dodson that we saw in this fight was a really high-level John Dodson. In his last couple of fights, there had been some question marks with him going into this title fight, in the last couple of fights, while he had won and maybe he'd got unanimous decision victories, he just hadn't looked at that elite level that we'd known him to be at. So I don't think that this was really a case of John Dodson not showing up, being distracted, or, being somewhat off his game coming back from, his long injury break. I really just think that this was Demetrious Johnson, excelling at such a high level that, his growth curve is he gains more in a fight than the rest of the division. So he's constantly ahead of the game. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. John Dodson didn't yes, he got dominated, but particularly he didn't look awful in this fight. Yes, he got beat badly, but he looked bad in that Zach Makovsky fight. And Demetrious Johnson is just a little bit better than Zach Makovsky, and I'm saying that sarcastically. He's a lot better than Zach Makovsky. I scored that John Dodson fight for Makovsky. So this is the case, like you mentioned, John Dodson looked good, but Demetrious Johnson was Demetrious Johnson. He looked just fantastic.
Yeah, the Mighty Mouse show continues. It's almost, he's so dominant. I don't really want to, almost overdwell on the fact or on the fight. Let's wrap it up a little bit as far as Demetrious Johnson goes, and we'll move on to some other things. What do you see for him, and ultimately, do you see anyone able to beat him at 125?
If John Dodson can't beat him, if Joseph Benavidez gets knocked out in the first round, there is nobody. Henry Cejudo will probably get that next shot if he wins against Jose Formiga, and both those guys haven't fought Demetrious Johnson. But Henry Cejudo really didn't look all that fantastic against Chico Camus. Yes, he clearly won that fight, but he should have dominated Chico Camus, beat him badly. If he plans on beating Demetrious Johnson, yes, he's looked really good in all three fights, but he hasn't fought the level of even guys, John Dodson, Joseph Benavidez, Jose Formiga, so on. This guy will probably fight Jose Formiga, probably win, and then fight Johnson, and then just get destroyed once again.
Yeah, I think, that's the matchup the UFC is clearly pushing for, and there's always some kind of name value in selling that Olympic medal that Henry Cejudo has. But I really think that we'll see a huge discrepancy in ring craft, and that Demetrious Johnson uses footwork extremely well. We saw it in this fight where he cuts off the cage, fairly well. Johnson did have some sort of John Dodson did have some sort of success circling out, but for the most part, especially in the latter three rounds, Demetrious Johnson had did a really good job of cutting off the cage, and that's going to be the story throughout the Henry Cejudo fight.
And I just want to add before we move on to other fights and whatnot, if you don't like watching Demetrious Johnson fight, yes, maybe you can say he's a bit boring at times because sometimes he grinds out fights. This fight, most of it was on the feet. And I really enjoy this fight, and I enjoy any Demetrious Johnson fight because I know he is probably the best fighter on the planet, if not probably the second or the third best. This guy is so good on the ground. He's so technical. He's good on the feet. He's so well-rounded. Just his skills are so high level. How can you not be a fan of watching his fights? And I know some reporters that were there at the event were saying people weren't walking out, like in Montreal and Vancouver back in when he fought Ali Bogotinov and I want to say it was Kyoji Horiguchi earlier this year. People weren't walking out. They were back then. Good for them, but they were booing, and I'm not a fan of those fans that were booing because how can you boo Demetrious Johnson?
Yeah, I don't appreciate the fans booing or just booing being a reaction. I guess there's certain occasions where it's fine to boo at an MMA event, a terrible decision, bizarre DQs. These are all right. I'm just in that situation where two fighters are clearly going after it. Don't boo that. Boo situations that really warrant it and save it. If you're just gonna boo because you're like, I don't like seeing small guys go at it, or you're like, I don't like that action. It's just like, well,
why are you there?
Just shut up or don't attend a fight. My ultimate takeaway on this and my final word on it is that ultimately I enjoy these fights. I think that the 125-pound fights are very good and they're interesting, despite the lack of kind of the explosive oh shit moments that we get in other weight classes of MMA. I still find them enjoyable. I don't find them as enjoyable as kind of those moments of kind of insanity that we get in other in the higher weight classes. But I still find these fights worthwhile to watch and very intriguing. To change focus to a fight that I did not find intriguing and did not enjoy at all in upper weight classes, let's talk about Andrei Arlovski against Frank Mir. But I'm going to rely on you to tell me about this fight because I genuinely fell asleep, despite the fact that my biggest bet of the night was on Andrei Arlovski. So I woke up to a couple of units in my pocket, and I was pretty happy about that. But yeah, definitely don't know really what happened to that fight.
So this is a case where fans, I'm not going to blame the fans for booing this one. That's one of the rare cases where booing is a bit okay. Andrei Arlovski, Frank Mir, most people thought they were going to go in there, slug it out for a couple of minutes, and then one of them was going to get knocked out. That didn't exactly happen at all. So Andrei Arlovski didn't really throw a punch, and he decided to throw the same combination for all 15 minutes. Meanwhile, Frank Mir decided to put on a couple pounds. He went in there and, again, didn't really do too much. He decided to gas in the first or second round, and that was the fight.
Yeah, Frank Mir is fully taking advantage of the 265-pound weight limit of heavyweight at this point. And it's not in lean muscle mass. It's not adding the pounds in lean muscle mass. Yeah, I had been calling all this week that Andrei Arlovski would take this fight. It was a strong lean. Like I said, it was my biggest bet of or I risked the most units on it out of any fight this week. I think that you're talking about these fighters in renaissance in the heavyweight division, and there's clearly two different categories. And one is kind of the Frank Mir category, which is like, I can knock out some bozos. And then there's Andrei Arlovski, a person who's actually turning his career around and actually having a resurgence.
Yeah, there was definitely a separation between the two, but I was very unimpressed with Andrei Arlovski despite getting that win. And I was one of the few people that scored it 30-27 for him, surprisingly. Most people saw it 29-28. Some people even scored it for Frank Mir, believe it or not. I just felt that Andre had the edge in every minute of the fight pretty much. Nothing happened really in the fight, but he was just one step ahead, more like a half a step ahead. He just did a bit more each round, to me anyways, to get the nod each round. But nevertheless, the 30-27 looks pretty good on paper, but this fight wasn't good on paper. Andrei Arlovski, I was very high on him coming into this fight because he destroyed Travis Browne. And I've never been ridiculously high on Travis Browne, but that was still a spectacular performance. Frank Mir coming off 2 knockouts, Bigfoot and Todd Duffy. Bigfoot, in my opinion, should retire. He's just able to beat guys like Soul Plele. That says enough. Todd Duffy, if he moved his head and didn't throw punches like super wide, he probably would have knocked Frank Mir out.
Yep.
I didn't put too much stock into Frank Mir's wins. I put probably too much stock into Andrei Arlovski's wins, and this is what happened.
I mean, and I want to also move away from this.
Why are we talking about?
Why are we talking about this fight? But I would say that Andrei Arlovski's not too many fights removed against a terrible performance against Brendan Schaub. Now that was a win, but that was a win with the most asterisks next to it.
A win and a loss, yeah.
A win and a loss, of everyone's time.
2-1.
And we're wasting people's time by continuing it. Andrei Arlovski will probably challenge for the next heavyweight in the next heavyweight championship, though, which will be insane. But anyhow,
I actually disagree, but
I hope it doesn't happen. But I know the UFC, they are trolling us. That is what is happening. Okay, this was actually exciting. Anthony Rumble Johnson in a second round KO over Jimmy Manuwa.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, so basically he was wrestling Jimmy Manuwa in the first round, and I don't know about you, but not exactly what I was expecting. People were tweeting in between the first and second round, I'm not sure if I like this Rumble Johnson. I was expecting a first-round knockout. And once again, I was very surprised we were going into the second round, and I had to give my first-round scorecard to Rumble. I was very surprised about that. I thought he'd get it done in the first round. But then he comes out heavy leather and knocks Jimmy Manuwa out cold in the second round.
I give Jimmy Manuwa a lot of props actually in this fight, despite getting really completely dominated. He's really fighting beyond his skill level. Jimmy Manuwa will forever, in a very shallow 205 division, Jimmy Manuwa floats around the bottom of that top 10, that top 15 maybe, and that's why I think he stays. But in this fight, even in that KO punch didn't really knock Jimmy Manuwa out. It knocked him down and knocked him down cleanly. And then that follow-up punch from Anthony Johnson was just something from fucking hell.
Yeah.
No human being's going to survive that. So, you know, I don't think many people gave Jimmy a shot. I had thrown some units on him because I thought that he would have some sort of – I just thought that the line was getting out of control. At some point it was plus 500, and, you know, I put a little over half a unit on it just because, you know, that's just a tasty reward if you went for it, and it's not too much risk. But Jimmy Manuwa, like I said, he's a guy who, you know, clearly has deficits and holes in his game, and he's never going to be able to you know, really crack the top 10, top 15 until he addresses those things. We keep talking about him as a prospect. He's like 32 years old, you know, way past the prospect age.
He's young in fight years, though.
He is young in fight years, but he's definitely taken some big shots in some big KOs now.
Like we saw.
Yeah, this is one of those fights that you look at, and you almost wish he kind of got knocked out in that first round because he took some damage all throughout that first round, getting ground. And, you know, Anthony lays some pretty heavy leather when he's in top position, obviously, as we saw against Gustafsson and plenty of other people. Let's not talk about Anthony Rumble Johnson right now. Let's figure out what happens to Jimmy Manuwa after this. What do you do? You're Jimmy Manuwa's manager. Let's play manager. You're Jimmy Manuwa's manager. What do you want from him? And then if you're the UFC, what do you do with Jimmy Manuwa?
What do you do with Jimmy Manuwa? That's a tough question. I'm looking at the rankings now, and clearly, like you mentioned, he can't go in there and beat the top dogs like Anthony Johnson, Alexander Gustafsson, Daniel Cormier. I even think I don't think he'd hang with Glover Teixeira even.
Nope.
Ryan Bader would be a kind of close fight, but probably not.
He'd wrestle fucking. You know, we just saw his deficit in his wrestling game. Ryan Bader will eat him alive on the, you know, ground game. Yeah.
Ovin St. Preux is one guy. I actually like that matchup, OSP versus Jimmy Manuwa.
Hey there. There's something. If I'm his manager, you're thinking a guy who's going to stand with you, a guy who's not too much of a threat. OSP kind of has some ground skills, but I don't think of him as like a takedown guy for some reason. Maybe it's his Ryan Bader fight that's, you know, lasting in my mind. But I think that's a fantastic matchup. If I'm both management or the UFC, I think that's a really good spot for him. But you know, guy's taking some bad KOs. You know, let him chill in a hyperbaric chamber for like 6 months or something. Repair some of that brain tissue.
Where OSP versus Jimmy Manuwa is one of those matchups where both guys were considered two top prospects in the 205-pound division, and then they're put in with the top of the cream of the crop, and then you know that they can't hang there. So two guys that were prospects aren't really prospects anymore because they've cracked into that top 10 or so. They can't hang in the top 5, but they're close to that. Two prospects that aren't prospects anymore because they lost a few fights, and it would be a good fight also.
Okay, let's play this game. In the main card, 5 main card winners, 10 fighters. If you have to buy the stock of one fighter on the main card here, actually, let's exclude Demetrius Johnson because he's the easiest pick. Whose stock are you buying? Who are you investing in the most? If you could invest in any main card fighter in the main card,
Andrei Arlovsky, no, just because he looked really disappointing. Corey Anderson. The thing with Corey Anderson is I was fairly impressed with his win. I know a lot of people found it very boring. I'm not sure if we're going to talk about that in a little bit or not, but it was not the best fight, but it was a big win for him. He's not going to be a contender in the light heavyweight division. Rumble, once again, looked very good. He really could knock out anybody. You put him in with Daniel Cormier, I think he wins 4 or 5 times. Paige Van Zandt beating Alex Chambers, great performance, but Alex Chambers is not even a ranked fighter. Paige Van Zandt, Paige Van Zandt or Rumble. The thing with Paige is we don't know how she would look against the top fighters, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Claudia Gadelha, and Rose Namajunas. So I guess I would kind of pick Paige just because she looked obviously really good against a not great opponent, but she has a hype there. She signed with Reebok, the exclusive deal. She's hyped up. Dana White would like her to be the champ in the future. So Paige or Rumble, I guess.
Yeah, I think overall, or how the marketing push is happening is like Paige Van Zandt's looking to be the inheritor of Ronda Rousey's crown in the next couple of years. And I think the UFC is being really smart with the slow roll on her. You mentioned that we're not sure how she stacks up against, Joanna and some of the other elite 15-pounders. But I think we do know how that's going to play out. I think we know that, Van Zandt gets rolled in a lot of those fights. Probably, just at this point, she probably just gets beat by about 3 or 4 girls there. I mean, I don't want to run them all down and figure it out. But with her looks and her personality and the way that the UFC is obviously going to give her, cookie or cupcake matchups, some tomato cans that she can crush. As she develops her skill set, I think that, in the future, Paige Van Zandt has a legitimate chance of becoming a very, very elite fighter. That 115-pound division is kind of in a weird spot that no one really knows what's going on. We thought we knew so much about it when we put all these girls in the Tough House, and now you look at the girls who came out of Tough 20, and they're not the people we're talking about in that division at all. Nearly every single one of those girls is kind of forgotten about, which is an unfortunate, but actually I think a very fortunate thing, because it's made high drama, and the real hardcores have taken on that division in a real serious way, because it was surprising instead of a planned out script that we kind of knew what was going to happen. Let's rewind a second though, and we'll touch briefly on Jan Blachowicz and Corey Anderson. This turned out to be a Corey Anderson showcase fight in a fight that was a damn near pick'em in the odds. I gave this fight a D because I give letter grades for each fight, just because it became so predictable and Jan's performance ended up being so disappointing. What do you think about Corey Anderson? A young guy gets a W here in a big spot, facing a guy who probably is hyped up a little bit more than he should be.
Yeah. Corey Anderson, this guy has potential to be a top 10, top 15 guy. He's never going to be at the very top, fighting guys like Anthony Johnson, Daniel Cormier, Alexander Gustafsson. But this guy does have potential. He did look improved in this matchup. And I picked him to win. Jan Blachowicz, his biggest win is over Ilir Latifi, who lots of people like to say is the next 205-pound champ. But I'm sorry, he's not. This guy isn't top 20. Jan Blachowicz.
Don't disrespect the bricklayer, bro.
Jan Blachowicz really is not a great fighter. We saw that in this performance. I picked Anderson. I wasn't surprised about this, with this fight too much. I was surprised he dominated that as badly as he did. I believe 2 judges scored it 30-25, 2 10-8 rounds. That's pretty damn rare.
That's fine.
And
I was fine with both those scorecards.
Yeah, I agree. I scored it, I think, 30-26 or 30-25. But either way, Corey Anderson has potential. I don't think he's going to live up to those not expectations. His expectations are actually rather low. Got knocked out by Jean Vellante his last fight, but people forget. I think he was beating that. I think he was winning that fight relatively clearly before the late third round TKO loss. Two wins over Matt Van Buren, Justin Jones. Not the best competition, but he won those fights. And you got to give him a bit of a step up in competition. You could say he's 4-0 just because he was on his way to beat Jean Vellante by decision. So overall, decent fighter, but never going to be at the top.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I was there live at the Corey Anderson John Vellante fight, and I think everyone there was pretty shocked about that because we saw him cruising to that victory. I think I rewatched that fight. Don't ask me why. I have very low standards for entertainment in my life. But I rewatched that fight, and on the tape, it seemed a lot closer than it did live. Sometimes live, you kind of have that weird thing where anyone pressing forward looks like they're winning. Yeah. But Corey Anderson, I tend to agree with you. I think, it's a guy with a definite ceiling. But, young fighters, there's always like the Robbie Lawler effect in MMA. You can always kind of figure it out. All you need to do is add, a couple more pieces to your puzzle, take a next step forward in confidence, change up your camp and take a year away from the game and change your philosophies. And you can really come out a new fighter. That's really the brilliant and awesome and really cool part about this game. And that a dude like Rafael dos Anjos can, be this middling guy and then out of nowhere, probably, change his steroid regimen, but, out of nowhere, add a couple new skills, become, shoot from that middling level to that elite level. There's always kind of hope. Go ahead.
I was just gonna add, that's the thing. He did look a lot more in shape in this matchup than he did, say, in his debut against Van Buren just 14 months ago or so. And he posted a picture, I believe, on social media or whatever, of his body a year ago to now, and it doesn't look like he's on steroids or anything. It's not like that change, but he does, he definitely improved, his fitness level and everything. He probably got a nutritionist and he looks more in shape. And I don't think he took PEDs or whatever. I'm just saying it wasn't a big enough change for PEDs or whatever, but he looked more in shape. His skills were better than last April, so you got to give him credit.
Yeah. The allegations that have been out there, that's why I kind of alluded to it. I'm not making accusations that Rafael dos Anjos on steroids, but I will say, there's always going to be question marks in this sport when a man gains 10 to 15 pounds of lean muscle mass. It's just anyone who's been around this block for a little while knows what the game is, and there's questions to be had there. I want to play the game that I invented last week or last episode. I want to play Name That Prelim Fighter with you, Nick Baldwin. You ready for this?
Brian's happy. He's listening to this and he just smiled.
Okay, good. Backed by incredible popular demand. Name That Prelim Fighter. Okay, Nick Baldwin. First, this prelim fighter was the only favorite to win.
John Lineker.
John Lineker in a
oh my god!
Absolutely insane moments in the octagon. This has to be up there in you know what? I was literally thinking back, and the only thing that I could think about that was maybe more insane was that Pete Sell fight where he hit that guy in the kidney and had him knocked out and then ran to finish him off and got one swing KO'd. I forget who the guy is who actually won that fight, what his name is. That maybe is the only thing I've seen that was more insane. John Lineker, making his 35-pound debut, undersized, has an incredible KO victory. What did you think about this insanity?
Well, before the fight started, when Bruce Buffer was yelling the two names and whatnot, I was telling my dad, who was sitting beside me, I was like, don't look off the screen. This is going to be a great fight. And all of a sudden, they're trading punches, and then all of a sudden, boom, 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 and then 10 or 20 shots are traded in a few split seconds. And I'm like, okay, yeah, my eyes are glued to the TV now. And then they keep swinging for each other, swinging literally for the fences. They have small regions, but they're probably touching the fences. And then all of a sudden, boom, and John Lineker lands the hardest punch, of course, and Rivera's out. But what a fantastic fight. Probably around the year. And surprise, this is a coincidental thing, but the two the two 1-round fights that maybe beat this are the two fighters that were in the most boring fight on this card: Andre Arlovsky versus Travis Brown, and Frank Mir over Todd Duffy. So it was a great fight.
Yeah, this is an unbelievable fight. I think that what was interesting about this fight, if we want to actually break down any of the action, and we don't want to just like take it for the visual spectacle that it was. Francisco was so much bigger than John Lineker, yes, and he had a really substantial reach advantage. So when they got into this exchange, Lineker's throwing hooks and really shortening his arms that are already substantially shorter. So he was throwing so many punches that just really weren't landing. Yeah. And Cisco, smart and was a real calculated fighter, and he was landing in those exchanges, and John wasn't. But John just had the chin of stone and just ate every single one of them. He took about 3 solid shots on the chin before he landed his first, and kind of just waited in there until he landed. I think it was a left hook. But as soon as his first substantial shot landed, Rivera was dropped. And it was just a clear difference in these two guys' power. Yeah. Props to Rivera again for really not being KO'd by any of those shots. There was a couple times where it looked really bad, but he really gritted his teeth and finished it, and or stayed alive. And Lineker had to find that guillotine choke to kind of end it. I don't really know what to say. I don't really know what to make of John Lineker in the 35-pound division. But ultimately, I left this fight thinking, God damn it, John, go back down to 125 and cut that fucking weight.
Yeah. First off, I want him to have 2 nicknames: the Hands of Stone, because he has the Hands of Stone, and a Chin of Stone. He showed, yeah. Rivera hit him really clean, and he didn't really go down at all. He didn't really look hurt at all. Rivera, though, looked so much bigger. Like, when I picked John Lineker to win this fight, he was slightly favored, but I didn't think there was going to be that big of a size disadvantage. Obviously, it didn't matter, but when John Lineker goes up and fights top 5 bantamweights, it could matter. John Lineker looked like a child fighting an adult. This guy is shorter than Demetrious Johnson, but he's just so thick. So that's why he has to fight at 35. He says he's not going to go down, and that could be smart. The weight cut was way too much for him, but find a nutritionist and maybe you can make the weight. He has made the weight, but I think performance-wise he's better at 35. But I think when you get to fighting guys like TJ Dillashaw, like if John Lineker was the #1 contender after the Ian McCall fight at flyweight. So how can you disagree with the fact that he's going to be right up there at bantamweight? It's just 10 pounds. So, but the thing is, in this case, the size does matter. He looked very small, and if he ever gets a title shot, it's not going to go well for him against TJ Dillashaw because of the size.
No, I think there's probably a lot of 35-pounders that give him a big trouble. I thought I read a lot of people on Twitter calling for him to fight Thomas Almeida. Is Almeida 35? For some reason, I thought that he's 35. I think a matchup like that is terrible for John Lineker.
Really?
Only in that, I think that Almeida just is a fighter that has better technical skills. I really think we saw to overcome a reach disadvantage, to overcome, a size disadvantage like John Lineker is. He's not a fantastic wrestler. His striking has to be much better than just throwing looping hooks like Wanderlei Silva in a Pride fight. That shit's not going to fly against someone with true Muay Thai skills. Now, I think that Cisco was relying on the reach and probably did have the technical, superiority in that fight, but was just kind of relying on that reach and, kind of got sucked into this whirlpool of insanity, much to his detriment. But I just don't think that flies with even anyone with serious hype and serious, title talks around their name in 35-pound division.
Yeah.
And in 125 pounds, a division that is just like dying for anyone to like bring a serious challenge. I think, you could say that there's a serious challenge there just in the power alone, as long as he can make the weight. And if you can make the weight once, why wouldn't you make that weight? It's probably the biggest money fight of your life,
Well, the thing with John Lineker, I really, really like that fight with Thomas Almeida. I think it kind of ends up the same way in the sense that it would be a very, very, very fun fight for the time it lasts. It's not going to go out of the second round. Thomas Almeida is probably he's the more technical striker, but John Lineker, I actually think he might hit harder, despite being that flyweight. It's hard to say. Both hit very hard. Almeida is a bit more technical. He has the size advantage, but just something about John Lineker, he can somehow overcome that size advantage. And don't get me wrong, I'm really high on Thomas Almeida. I think he's a future top 5, maybe even title contender, maybe even champion, but I don't quite think he's there this second. And John Lineker, don't forget, he's only 24 years old. This guy isn't even in his prime, and he's a top 5 fighter skill-wise, in my opinion, at flyweight and probably even at bantamweight. John Lineker versus Thomas Almeida, I would pay $60 for that, just for that one fight. Maybe it'd go 2 minutes, but that's still worth $60.
I'm not going to pay $60 just for that fight, but I'll buy it in a 5-fight package. All right, let's move on to another guess's prelim fighter. This prelim fighter has the worst overall set of tattoos in MMA.
Ross Pearson?
Ross Pearson is correct. Ross Pearson has the most unintelligible tattoos that I've ever seen in my life. Someone pointed it out in the last card he was on, which was, I feel like it was like 2 weeks ago that both Ross Pearson and Paul Felder fought. Like, these guys are on the fastest turnaround schedule in the world. And Ross Pearson, a guy who gets knocked out and was known as a little chinny, should not be on a quick turnaround schedule. But someone mentioned it last fight. But, I cannot visually identify one tattoo on his body. Like, you can look, even... I say second most because, the legendary worst tattoo in the world, Alan Belcher. But at least Alan Belcher, Alan Belcher has like the worst Johnny Cash tattoo.
What about Renan Barão?
Renan Barão's pretty bad, but I don't know. Renan Barão looks like someone who makes dumb decisions regularly. Like as soon as someone gave Renan Barão $500, he probably went and got that stupid tattoo, and everyone was like, "Yeah, fucking give a guy $500, But Alan Belcher looks and sounds like an intelligent human being, and speaks about fighting well and eloquently. And then, and he's sticking by it too. He's sticking by that tattoo like it's actually good, which I can appreciate. If you're going to have a shit awful tattoo on yourself, lie to yourself about it. Lie to everyone about it. Keep telling everyone that it is a great tattoo and that everyone else is just not seeing the genius of it. But no, Ross Pearson doesn't have a single tattoo that means anything on his body. Won a really weird split decision fight. Joe Rogan decided afterwards that instead of the traditional interview format, everyone was just going to have like a mini camp out powwow next to brooding Paul Felder, which I'm assuming he appreciated a lot. How did you score this fight? Because there was some controversy, and what are your takeaways from it?
Takeaways is that Paul Felder somehow looks very good against Edson Barboza and not really against Ross Pearson. The thing is, maybe he just the layoff, or not the layoff, like the quick turnaround got to him. Maybe that's it. But Ross Pearson, about the tattoos, first off, quickly, I don't really pay attention to tattoos, so I don't really care about that. But back to the fight, Ross Pearson, I think I scored it, I want to say 29-28 in his favor, but with the judges, I wouldn't it was a split, so I can't say I was absolutely shocked that Felder was one judge saw it in favor of Felder. That isn't a terrible call It's not the call I agree with, but with judges, you gotta assume there's going to be a bad call on nearly every fight. But fight-wise, it was a strange fight. I was expecting a first-round knockout for Paul Felder. If anything, he would just win a decision in a fairly fun fight. Ross Pearson, his chin, I don't think is fantastic, but Paul Felder really didn't land a whole lot of spinning crap or spinning shit or really anything. So it was a weird fight. It wasn't the fight I was hoping for. It wasn't the fight I was expecting. Overall, I was disappointed, but a big win for Ross Pearson.
Yeah, I think what I found interesting about this fight was, and I'd have to go back to my scorecard. I think I scored this fight for Paul Felder in giving him the first round and the third round. No, I scored this for Ross Pearson. I can look up my score sheet as we speak right now. The problem that I had with what Paul Felder decided to do, and I gave him the first and the third rounds to Felder. What I had a problem with was that in the first round, he had a lot of success actually in the clinch and in that range. And then, his corner decided to him, he said, like, take a step back. You can win in these striking exchanges. But that, I feel like, is the only part of Ross Pearson's game that he's actually evolved and, like, become a better fighter at. He's really crisp in a good boxer, but not on the inside. He's not good at the clinch game. He's really not good up against the fence. He doesn't throw really good, powerful knees. He's not Muay Thai striking. He's a boxer. But if you're going to range fight with him and you're going to wade into that punching range, and not just like stay very far out and only work your kicks, well, then you're entering into the only distance and in the only type of fighting where he may have an advantage. I think he could have easily gone into the clinch game again in the second round, taken that second round easily. And then if you're looking for, to have a striking battle and have a showcase fight, strike with them out in the third. You lose the third. But, you end up taking in the scorecards anyway. I think Paul Felder here, that this was a problem with him taking a fight, again, too quickly. Then, from his last fight, I really believe, especially with newer fighters, it's really good to take, like these 6 months chunks of time where you're not even scheduling a fight. Let your body fully recover, let yourself heal up, let your skill set develop. He has holes in his wrestling game. He clearly has holes in his defensive striking game. And these are things that, you can really pay attention to and work on. If you have that time to take, time in between fights instead of instantly taking a fight and saying, like, let me earn some money and let me make, let me get something on the books and go right into a camp again.
And on the other hand, I just want to add that Ross Pearson, I guess, coming off a fairly short notice fight, is probably better, and Paul Felder is worse. The thing is, in this case, some people were saying, oh, Ross Pearson looked fantastic. Unlike Dodson looked good. It was just that DJ is DJ. He's fantastic. Paul Felder, in this fight, Paul Felder just looked bad. Ross Pearson didn't look fantastic really at all. I wasn't ridiculously impressed with his fight at all, but he just did enough to win. He did more than Paul Felder, and in this case, I think it was just the fact that Paul Felder didn't look good.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you there. I think that there was some low IQ moves kind of by Paul Felder. I think, and to rewind actually to the first point that you made, I think that it's a smarter move for veteran fighters like Ross Pearson to do the quick turnarounds. The wear and tear on the body of going through camps almost worse than the damage they end up taking in these fights. Just like, 8 hard weeks of training, really beats up a body after it's been through 10 of those training camps. MMA is, a sport that just beats you up. So it makes sense once you gear up your body to like get into fighting shape, to take a quick turnaround fight and to get that second payday, while you've done the bulk of the getting in shape part. You can spend, a 3-week, 4-week camp just fine-tuning whatever skills you have for that specific opponent. So while it's not a good idea for Felder, I think it's a great idea for Ross Pearson.
And Donald Cerrone.
Yeah, and Donald Cerrone, but that's another dude who has so many fights under his belt at this point that he's not going back to the lab and being like, let me overhaul huge portions of my game. While he could use a little bit of wrestling technique, I think Donald's one of these guys who's a finished product as a fighter. At least that's how I interpret it. There's always surprises in everyone's career, but a finished fighter.
I don't think he's really getting better at this point.
Yeah, he's not going to remarkably change. He's
not going to evolve. Yeah,
exactly. All right, so name this prelim fighter. This prelim fighter has the most disrespectful nickname in MMA.
Let's see. I have no idea.
Okay, Cassius Clay Collard.
I didn't even know that was his nickname. So
Cassius Clay Collard. First of all, you're taking on the slave name of maybe boxing's greatest champion, a name that he disavowed, and you're a white dude doing it, and I think he's a white dude from Price, Utah, and poor Cassius Clay, he paid for it this time. Early fight in the Fox Sports prelims. This guy, Trador, didn't really look great, but it seemed like Clay Collard was really lackadaisical and was using, it was putting himself in really bad spots that he really didn't need to. In an attempt to kind of look exciting, I guess, in an attempt to think that he kind of had more of a skill advantage over his opponent than he really did, and ultimately, bit him in the ass.
Well, first off, there was a moment in the, I believe, second or third round where he was in a position where he probably could have finished the fight. I forget if it was a TKO or submission, and then all of a sudden, Thiago Trader, 10 seconds later, is like right on top of him or whatever, and I'm just like, where is the IQ in this fight? And secondly, where is the cardio? Like, he fought Gabriel Benitez over in Mexico City, and so I kind of gave him the excuse. The altitude. Cain Velasquez didn't have that good cardio, so I'm not going to fault Clay Collard for not either. But, like, what are you doing? Are you not training strength and conditioning at all? This guy is an exciting fighter, and he's kind of a wasted talent because he could be a decent fighter. I'm not saying he's like top 10 or could be top 10, but he could be a bit better than he is.
Yeah. I think that Clay Collard's problem isn't probably so much in his training regimen as it is in the fact that when he throws shots, he just seems to throw everything behind it, and they're coming from his hips. So you just have so much more arm, your arms get so much tired having to bring them all the way up, and, then if they're in, a proper position. I think the only thing that's really going to change, for Clay Collard is if he finds a new camp and, new coaches who are really going to take some time for him to not take a fight, to take some time in the gym, and to really clean up his style. He's probably very comfortable with his style and really confident in, this, keeping his hands low and, going for very high risk maneuvers. But he needs someone to kind of pull him out of that comfort zone and say, no, we're going to work fundamentals. You're a boxing champion. Let's go back to the boxing basics and let's work that stance. Let's keep these hands up and then move on from there with adding skills. Just because you're not going to fight high-level MMA and get hit as much as he does. And that's another reason why he's sapping his cardio. He's getting hit in the jaw a lot, and there's nothing that makes you gas more than getting punched in the fucking face.
Yeah. Did you see that moment in the fight, second or third round, where he threw 3 or 4 spinning back fists consecutively in like 10 seconds? I'm sorry, you are not Paul the Irish Dragon Felder. And even he threw too many spinning strikes in the Edson Barboza fight. I was like, okay, this is enough. But Clay Collard, I'm sorry, you are not Paul Felder. The camp wise, I'm not too sure where he trains. Do you know where he trains?
Yeah, I think he trains like in a small independent gym where he's
Oh,
like the
okay.
guy.
Yeah.
Price Utah
When
isn't really popping. I mean, I could be wrong. I really should probably research it up, but I think I was reading up on him, and he's just like fighting out of like I don't know. You're in Utah. He could be fighting at the pit elevated.
yeah.
I think I would know if he was.
It, if Clay Collard is the man at the gym, maybe it'd probably be a good idea to go to another camp with a bit better coaches, a bit more recognition or whatnot, recognition.
I really think you need to go to. He has a very extensive boxing background, and he kind of takes like whatever mentality that into MMA.
Yeah.
You guys like that really need to spend some time at a high level MMA big camp. Go to a syndicate, go to an American top team. But if you're there in Utah, you're not far away. You want to fight it out to the pit elevateds there. There's some decent fighters there. That you're going to get good looks from. You're going to get really high level instruction. He's a really young fighter. He could turn everything around. This could just be kind of like that rocky part in the beginning of his career, or he could use this loss and really spiral down a bad path. Clay's at a real crossroad in his career.
Maybe he is that guy where he's just at a rocky point in his career and will get better. But he's 1-3 in the UFC, 2 fights skid. For all we know, he might get cut after this loss. He puts on fun fights, so maybe not. But it's not all about fun fights. You need to have a bit of skill everywhere. And this kid needs to work on his defense. Yes, he's young, evolving and whatnot. But to me, anyways, it's not looking like he's improving every day. And that's what you need to do if you want to fight in the UFC for a long time.
Yeah, definitely. All right. We got 3 more fights to talk about. I'm going to rapid fire through these. We'll grade the card, we'll put a cherry on top of this episode, and get on our way to me watching the rest of the press conference. We could do one more question. This one's a gimme. It was this fighter's birthday today.
Well, that's not a gimme to me, but wait, I remember hearing a birthday.
Come on. Joe Rogan wished this fighter a happy birthday in the post-fight interview.
If it was one of the 2 women, I didn't watch that fight.
Oh, that's where you failed. It was Raquel Pennington's birthday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. If you didn't watch this fight, actually,
I need to go back and watch it. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely worth the watch. This is kind of one of those fights, and in MMA, this happens sometimes. You're not seeing necessarily the 2 greatest, athletes in the world can like fighting each other, but when 2 people on equal skill level and equal athleticism, sometimes you just get to see like this dogged determination and who really wants a fight more. And this was it. Jessica Andrade, and apparently, if you're a connoisseur of Mike Goldberg pronunciations, you'll notice that we've been adding an extra syllable to Jessica Andrade's last name. So her new name is Jessica Andrade. Yeah, man, it's really good. It's rough out there. It's rough out there for an MMA fan.
I think he needs to get those those audio clips that John Anik and Kenny Florian get.
Those are for rookies. Yeah. Mike, beyond Mike's, pronunciation of her name, she got like 6 takedowns in the first round, but Rocky just kept popping up. But goddamn it, in the second round, Pennington refused to be taken down and just started landing shots, and it was big, and it got entertaining really quickly. And then Jessica Andrade landed some huge power shots that at the end of the post-fight, you could already see the swelling happen. She might have even taken like a hairline fracture in her cheek. It looked like really bad damage. But somehow, Pennington rolled through it, knocked her down, got her back, rear naked choke. Really fantastic finish. Kind of outside of Ronda Rousey, you got to kind of save her when these 135-pound girls go crazy.
Yeah, for sure. But definitely a fight I have to go back and watch. And it's kind of funny because I was kind of making jokes about how this was the best rematch on the card
Yeah.
because I'm not sure if you know, but they did fight back March
Yeah.
2014. Andrade got the split in that fight, and funny enough, I didn't even see that either. Maybe I should go back and watch both, but
I saw that fight and directly deleted it from my brain because a lot of people said that fight was really good, but I watched that fight. I did not recall it being like particularly good. I
okay,
think I
maybe I'll just watch the second one then.
definitely watched the second one. Well worth it.
Okay.
All right, Fight Pass prelims. We had a really interesting finish in that Joe Riggs got a DQ victory over poor choir boy Ron Stallings. Bizarre finish because he took an injury to the eye. He thought it was from a poke. It looked like it was from a left jab. Later on in the second round, despite the injury, Joe Riggs, knocked down Stalling, mounted him, and was pounding away. An illegal up kick stopped the fight momentarily, and they said that the up kick caused the eye injury, and thus it's a DQ victory for Joe Riggs. Just an MMA clusterfuck of the normal variety here, or is this one particularly special to you, Nick?
Not really special. It was looking to be a fun fight in the second, actually. So I was like, no, Jason Herzog, don't stop the fight. But first off, I just want to say it kind of bothers me in between rounds that his coach, Joe Riggs was saying, buddy, I can't see out of my eye. And then his coach, okay, go back to high school. Go do your thing. I'm like, no, stop the fight. If you can't see, stop the fight. And coaches do that too often. And
You know what happens when I lose vision in my left eye? I always just go back to high school.
it wasn't good. But
You're in high school. You use your left eye like what, 10% of the time? You don't need a left eye. You're in high school. Go to high school.
Yeah.
Go back to high school. The craziest advice I ever saw after a fighter said to a coach, "I cannot see out of my left eye."
Go back to high school. It's like, where did that come from? I'm sorry, but
Take some SATs. Yeah, I can't see out of my left eye. It's like, go to take an SAT prep class. Go to
this is your locker break. Get a snack. It's like, what are you talking about? But about the fight, it was looking to be a fun fight, like I said in the second. So kind of disappointed they stopped it, but Joe Riggs wanted to stop it, so I guess I can't be too disappointed because I was just faulting his coach for not wanting to stop it. But either way, the DQ I did not agree with. The thing with this is, depending on what the ref did, it could have been a no contest or a DQ. The ref, he suffered the eye injury in the first round, and maybe that illegal up kick to the downed opponent of Joe Riggs, maybe it grazed his eye and caused a bit of damage, but most of the damage was done in the first 5 minutes of the first round. And so the reason they stopped it was not the up kick. That's what paused the fight to get the doctor to look at the eye. But the eye injury was what caused the fight to be stopped. And if it was the eye injury, then it should have been a no contest because eye pokes are almost always unintentional unless you're a John Jones. But but they stopped due to the eye. If Jason Herzog, and I correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure he was the ref. Probably should just say the ref. But if he stopped it right when the up kick happened, said, guys, stop, and you're disqualified. Yeah. Then I was like, well, yeah, disqualification. You're stopping it to the up kick. But he paused the fight because of the up kick, the illegal up kick, that is. And then the doctor called it off because he couldn't see, like the coach should have done. But at the end, they stopped it because of the eye injury, so it should have been a no contest. If they stopped it right away because of the kick, should have been a DQ.
Yeah,
I think they messed up.
Yeah, I mean, just I don't know how this should have gone. I don't really even really care to posit an opinion, except for the fact that this fight should have been stopped at the end of the first round when a fighter tells his coach that you know what, and the UFC takes so many steps to, ensure fighter safety, and they've blurred the lines that are traditionally done in the corners. The cut men are hired by the UFC. They allow all the commissions are in there. We're not deaf to it. If you and I know that fighter said that to that coach, then that should be communicated to the people cage side. And there should be, a commission with the balls to fucking go in there and say, hello, we just heard a fighter say that he cannot see out of his eye.
Yeah.
I would like to speak to said fighter. Did you say that you cannot see out of your fucking eyeball?
Yeah.
And this fight is over, because if you cannot see out of an eyeball, you need immediate medical attention.
Yeah.
Oh, what's that? Upon further examination, you're bleeding directly out of your eyeball. Holy shit, maybe we should make a fucking decision here. It's like, you're in fucking Canada. I'm all the way here on the fucking East Coast, and we know that the guy can't see out of his eyeball.
Yeah.
But the fucking commissioner in Las Vegas, who's in the fucking building standing 5 feet away from him, we're supposed to believe that he doesn't know that? Or even worse, we're supposed to believe that he does know that and chooses to do fucking nothing about it? What the fuck is going on, guys? You're there, you're paid by the fucking state of Nevada to ensure fighter safety. It's your only fucking reason for being there. You're not there to get free fucking drink tickets and watch some fights, bro. You have a job to do. Fucking do a job,
How good does it sound when the UFC is basically saying, okay, fighters, safety is our 6th highest priority? It's like, what the heck does that even mean? So what are the 5 in front of it? Joe Riggs versus Ron Stallings, a good fight. Joe Riggs get into the win column. Blah 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 blah. Oh, and then we need to make sure the fighters are safe. No, yes, 2 guys are going out there and punching each other in the face, trying to knock each other out, basically trying to kill each other. Not quite, but almost. And so yes, they're going to get hurt sometimes. Yes. Anderson Silva will break his leg. Other people will do this, get injured and whatnot, get bloody faces, like we saw Cain Velasquez, Bigfoot Silva. But I'm sorry, safety has always been the highest priority, despite the sport being one of the roughest in the world. It's still a professional sport. There's still a commission. The Nevada State Athletic Commission. This is not Brazil, and even Brazil should have been able to stop that fight. This isn't the Brazilian Commission. This is the Nevada State Athletic Commission, and they did not call off that fight. To me, that's saying safety is their 2nd or 3rd priority. Joe Riggs getting to the winning column and having a good fight is 1 and 2, and that's not right at all.
Here's my thing. For the fighters, safety shouldn't be their first priority. Their first priority is to fight. For the UFC, safety isn't their first priority, and I don't mind that either. They're the promoter. Their first priority should be putting on fucking fantastic fights and selling fucking tickets. Yeah. The referee, it's not even really fighter safety is his priority, but his number 1 priority is that a fight follows the rules of a fight. Yeah. The fucking doctor who is cage side and part of the commission, guess whose job it is for fighter safety? You're the dude there for fighter safety. We decided that we should worry about these guys' safety. What do you think? Yeah, let's hire a fucking full-time doctor to sit around here and make sure that none of this shit gets too crazy, all right? Yeah, if a guy goes blind, maybe he should stop the fight. Yeah, let's give him the power to stop the fight if he thinks the fighter's blind. This is what the rules are,
The doctor is just using that to get free cage side tickets. He probably looks towards the judges who are sitting there judging fights. Judges, what should I do? Do you want me to call this off, or should I keep going? Ref, what do you want? Dana White, what do you want? Lorenzo, it's no.
How many times have you seen a doctor confer with someone about what his decision's going to be, and it's guy, you're the decision maker. Yeah. That's what. He'll talk to a referee and be like, well, what do you think? I might stop the fight. And the guy's like, are you going to stop the fight? Because it's your job to decide, are you going to stop the fight?
And even the fact that the doctor had to think about it for 5 seconds when Joe Riggs said, I can't see. It's if I was the doctor, I would have said, okay, it's over. Split second, wave it off. He sat there for 10 seconds. Are you sure you can't see?
I don't mind to wait. I don't mind to wait.
Can you triple check that you can't see out of your eye? Can you quadruple check? It's like, no, doctor, I can't see. It's like, okay, wave it off. Fight over. It's like,
yeah, because fighters gonna lie about it if they want it to continue, and more likely than not, if they can't see, they're gonna lie about it anyhow. But
when a fighter says they can't see, they don't want to fight. It's simple.
Yeah, I mean, to throw back in that Anthony Pettis fight, he said he couldn't see out of his eye, and I think he whispered it to his coach. But we knew about it from the broadcast. Once again, I think that there's it should be their responsibility, and there must be people in the commission watching a feed and not just sitting around. Like, someone should be calling in and be like, that's not right. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, this should be stopped.
I don't care that you're fighting for the UFC lightweight title. You're down 4 rounds. You're the champ. You're about to lose. If you can't see, don't fight. Yeah, you can't see.
Yeah, we can't put fighters in there half blind.
No.
All right, so that exhausts
Other
that
than
issue.
Michael Bisping.
Michael Bisping has the exception. There was one last fight. It was the opening fight on the prelim with Joaquim Silva against, and then this dude. God damn, this dude's last name.
Silva versus this dude.
Yeah, this dude. Nazareno Magalhaer. Fuck it. It was actually a pretty good back and forth battle. The underdog took it. This guy Silva. It was an all right fight. We'll leave it at that. Let's wrap a bow on this whole thing. First, what was your fight of the night?
Obviously Lineker and Rivera.
Ooh, interesting. Actually, I put my hold on, I have my fight of the night. No,
Andrei Arlovski versus Frank Mir.
Absolutely, Andrei. It's right there. No, I give John Lineker. Someone wrote actually that they gave him the KO of the night, the sub of the night, and the performance of the night, which I wouldn't argue against if we're going to give it. But I'm going to give the fight of the night to Andrade Raquel Pennington, only because it was back and forth, it was wild, but and just to be different from your opinion. We'll give sub of the night to John Lineker as one of my performance bonuses. Who do you want to give one of your performance bonuses to?
I'd have to go with Anthony Rumble Johnson with his second round knockout over Manua.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the second one that I had canceled here, or I had circled here rather. Paige Van Zandt had a sub finish. The
fact that that Alex Chambers was her opponent, it's like, it was impressive, but it was against Alex Chambers.
It was impressive that she could just kind of do it on command. Oh, I'm sorry. I have this recircled in that Ross Pearson against Paul Felder was my fight of the night. I know a lot of people just said it was good, not great, but I thought it was really good and back and forth. And I don't know. I was kind of happy to see Ross Pearson kind of have a moment in the sun. Overall, what would you grade this card? A to F.
There were some people saying up until after Andrei Arlovski, Frank Mir, some people were saying this card is terrible. And I was like, what fights are you watching? Yeah, maybe if you just watch Arlovski, Mir, and Anderson Blachowicz and a couple others, but it's like overall the card was pretty freaking good. Like Johnson Dodson, really enjoyed that fight. Arlovski, Mir, one of the exceptions. Anthony Johnson, big knockout win. You can't complain. Who doesn't want to see Rumble knockouts, of course? Hardest hitter probably in the light heavyweight division. John Blachowicz, Corey Anderson. This was a fight. So many people were saying, oh, yeah, I'm sleeping, and probably people did fall asleep. But I kind of enjoyed this fight, and call me crazy, but I kind of appreciated Corey Anderson's skill on the ground, his grinding skill. Some people don't like this grinding skill, and sometimes I don't either. But overall, I was impressed with him and thought it was a good performance. So overall, the card was pretty good in my eyes. There was a few fights that I wasn't impressed with, thought could have been better. Pretty disappointed with a couple, but overall, I thought it was pretty good. I'll go with a B-.
B-. I actually graded this card a little bit better. I grade every fight, and I try to take a visual average of everything. I ended up giving this card overall a B. Based on the strength of that Fox Sports 1 prelim card. There was an A+ fight in Rivera Lineker. There was an A fight in Pearson Felder. I gave a B+ to the Pennington Andrade fight, and even the Clay Collard Trader fight, I gave a B- because there's some good back and forth
It was
action.
fun. It was fun.
Yeah, despite the stupidity involved in it, I kind of enjoyed it. The stinkers of it being in the pay-per-view section. Sorry, that Corey Anderson fight. I was really disappointed that I can't really grade a card or a fight really high unless there's like some sort of competition involved in it.
Yeah.
So while I was impressed by Corey Anderson, Jan was super disappointing. I gave it a D. I gave a C- to Andrei Arlovsky's half-hearted beating of Frank Mir, and we end up at a B. I think with a B rated for the main event too, because I was really interested in Demetrius Johnson and what he did, and I thought that it was super impressive. But at the same time, it didn't raise up into those great fight levels just because John wasn't able to pull something together enough to be threatening to be a victor there. So that's it. That's UFC 191. Let me thank you, Nick, for coming on the show and everything. And yeah, definitely. And here's an opportunity to tell the people where they can find you on the web and on the Twitter.
For sure. So once again, thanks for having me. You can find me on Twitter at NickUFC. Check out my website, mmajr.co. We had lots of pre-fight coverage for this event. We'll have lots of post-fight coverage, a few articles and whatnot out tonight, tomorrow, next day, so on. Check out my podcast, of course. I host it weekly with John King, MMA Junior Radio. I don't have any guests lined up for next week quite yet, but of course we do have guests on every show. We talk news and then preview and recap fight cards. And we do have a contest going on over on my website, mmajr.co. We're giving away 5 copies of the brand new mobile game on iOS. It's called MMA Manager, where you're basically the manager of MMA fighters. Really fun game. Definitely check that out and enter the contest. It's really easy to enter, and that ends on Wednesday. So I think that's about it. And it's always good to talk MMA, and love being back on for sure.
Oh, no, definitely. We love having you on, man. Thanks for taking the time. And definitely people out there, be sure to check out mmajr.co, mmajunior.co. One of the better put together MMA sites, and unlike some of the USA Today type sites, they don't really bog you down with too many pop-up ads and all kinds of nonsense. So a little refreshing in the MMA landscape. No, I've always been a big fan of your site, even before before we became Twitter buddies. I always thought that you guys put together a pretty good product over there. Thanks, Nick, so much for coming on the show. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and everyone who always supports and tweets out the links. Everyone out there in Twitter who gives this show love. I really do deeply appreciate it. Thanks for stopping by. Everyone, have a good night. All right, take it easy.